You're listening to episode 184 of Outnumbered the podcast. Okay, guys, we fully realize that this sentence is going to make us sound super old, but is anyone tired of the disrespect they're seeing running rampant in society, especially among young people? We really want to raise children who show respect for elders, the earth, themselves, God, everything under the sun, but how do we do it? How do we avoid raising children who are disrespectful and instead raise loving, contributing members of society? Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome to Outnumbered the podcast. I'm Audrey.
And I'm Bonnie. We are experienced moms to a combined total of 19 children.
In our weekly episodes, we explore relatable topics using our perspectives of humor and chaos.
Tune in for advice and encouragement to gain more joy in your parenting journey. Hello, friends. Welcome back. We are going to talk about one of our biggest parenting pet peeves, and probably that of most parents out there. And that is working with disrespectful children, right? And not only is it our children that drives us crazy when they're disrespectful, but other people's, right? They just drive you nuts. So nobody wants to raise kids that don't treat people and property with respect. So we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm supposed to start with a humor segment, but just today, I was in town running errands and my kids broke the oven door. So what do we do? It's like one of those funny, not funny things. Like, I don't know if I'm going to make them like cook supper or work off the payment for a new oven door or make them try to fix it themselves or just the things, it's like a day. It's like you work on it. It's a big picture idea thing in your house, basic respect. And then I think just a lot of this is just kids not thinking, not using their brain for rational thought. Like, I wonder what happens when I, stand on the dryer door or the dishwasher door. Any door basically in our house has been broken because there's been a kid standing or swinging on it.
Yep. That sounds about right. I think maybe you need to dive a little bit deeper and find out exactly what happened. If they were opening it to bake a batch of cookies, then it's okay. You will replace it for them. Right. If they opened it and then they put a child on it to use as a trampoline, then it's their responsibility.
Right. I want to know like what they were doing, what they were trying to reach by standing on the oven door or something. I mean, that's like my guess.
Right.
Hey, you guys, we have something fun we want to tell you about. So here we are on episode 184. That's a lot, you guys. And maybe you can't remember all the episodes that we've done. Spoiler alert, we can't really either.
Neither can we. But they're good ones. We promise.
They're all good, every single one of them. So what we have done, what we've started doing is making some episode guides. These things are free. They link to our most popular episodes on like a lot of topics. Like we've done a lot about self-care. We've done a lot about teenagers. We've done a lot about marriage, these different series that we have. And so we are going to have these available for you guys and for other people. If you want to refer other people, somebody just has toddlers, refer them to the one, maybe send them the link to the one that's just about babies or toddlers or that kind of thing. So anyway, those are going to be linked in the show notes.
Yeah, we've spent a bunch of time creating these PDFs and there's going to be tons of them. We've got about 5 ready already and we're going to just keep adding to them. But click that link in the show notes. Go download however many you want. You just put in your email and we send them directly to you. And that should be a good guide, especially to new listeners, on where to start for specific topics. So, okay, now back to respect. We always like to define the words that we're trying to teach our children, right? We want to teach them respect. What does that even mean, right? So the dictionary includes lots of words that are similar, right? A special regard. To respect something, hold it in special regard, particular attention to it, or the state of being esteemed, right? If we want respect, we want people to esteem us kind of highly. It is also connected to the word concern. So having concern for something or someone would be to respect them.
Right. I think it helps us to define these things because then we can aim at something. We know exactly what we're talking about and we can have specifics, generalities with kids, big ideas like respect. That's like, meh. But right. If we can actually define for them, okay, so this is what it means to be respectful and this is how we're going to try to be respectful. It's helpful to them. So there's a few areas where we notice kids need special help in this. It's like respecting Well, like we were just talking about, their home or our home, a room, things that we spend money on. That's what commonly comes to mind when we think about, a lack of respect for things. But then there's also our bodies, or our our values that we hold as a family, their siblings' belongings. That's what a lot of our parenting is about, isn't it? She touched my stuff, he touched my stuff.
Mm.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally. I love that what you said, that if we're going to be explaining and teaching a big picture topic like this, especially a word that's a little bit hard to define, we've got to do our best to break it down for our children, or else they're never going to be able to get it. They're just, they're going to have this vague conception in their head of what respect is. And one way to do this, I know we've talked about this before, are little role plays. These can be really fun, especially at the dinner table or sitting around in the car, to say, okay, somebody goes into your room and grabs your thing and takes it and uses it. Is that respectful or not? What would be a more respectful way of treating that person's property? They could ask permission, they could leave it alone, any number of things. So especially real life examples that you've seen happen in your house, right? Somebody pokes somebody steals something, that kind of thing. So a little while ago, I know I've talked about this before on the podcast and a couple of times on our Patreon podcast, but a little while ago, I decided, I kind of came to me that most of our fights and issues, conflicts around the house, were related to some sort of respect issue, or disrespect, I should say. Things like respecting each other's bodies, respecting the home, respecting their parents. We started talking about using respectful language, respecting God. So they were very, appropriately had appropriate behavior, doing prayers and worship services, that sort of thing. So I actually created a poster outlining all these things that my kids should show respect for. And I felt like that was a really easy way to kind of shrink down all the behaviors that I was expecting from them. And we actually offer that in our Patreon, to our Patreon subscribers. But so respect's been on my mind for a long time.
Yeah. Our topic today, we've kind of split it down into 5 steps on helping our kids overcome disrespect. And so we're going to try to, break it down, like, just from the very basic value. Where do we start? How do we build more respect in our kids if we're dealing with basic disrespect in our homes? So respect and obedience are very, very interconnected. Like, you can't really separate one from the other. And this is just like a fundamental belief in our house. If you are not obeying your parents, you're disrespecting your parents. That kind of thing. And so, just basic obedience, like starting from the time they're very youngest toddlers. And so, like, I tell you to pick up your toys. And then if you don't pick up your toys, then I take your hand and I teach you how to pick up toys, because that is teaching you obedience. And then by extension, that's teaching you respect.
Right. This seems almost unfair to start off with. We'll just teach them to obey and then all your problems will go away. Yeah, we get that that's the main thing we're working on the entire time
Yeah.
we are parents to children at home, right? But obviously, if you want your children to be respectful, but they still don't even listen to you in the simplest of things, then that's where we need to start, right? When I ask you to do this thing, you need to follow through and do it. I'll remind you guys once again to go back and listen to our episode with guest Andy Martineau. We shared her book that she wrote recently on Instagram, because she has a really, really unique way of parenting where you choose connection over correcting the bad behaviors. And this is an excellent place to start. I highly recommend the book. Anyway, even just re-listening to that episode, because if you feel like there's a major breakdown in your relationship with your children, connecting will be the long-term solution to that misbehavior, right?
Right. And if you're well connected to your kids, they'll obey you and respect. They'll obey and respect you, even like when they don't want to, because there's like a connection with you that they don't want to disturb.
Right, right. I love the thought of, we, how do they say it? When we want our children to behave better, we actually have to make them feel better first. We don't make them behave better by making them feel worse. And yet somehow over the generations we've been taught, well, we discipline and we do these things to make our children feel shame or bad about themselves, and then they'll fix themselves. Well, does that work for us? Nope, sure doesn't. When I feel ashamed, I don't want to get better. I just want to get angry. So, building our children up will help them want to be better people.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a hard one, but we encourage you to continue working on obedience with your kids, because this will make your entire home a happier place, and it will make life easier across the board, like for you and for your kids. They really, we're going to talk about it here a little bit more in a second. But this really gives them security in their home with you
Mhm.
when they know that, like, this is just something they can fall back on. We are respectful and we obey.
Yes, yes, yes. And when that becomes your family culture too, they know what to expect. Like you say, they know that this will be allowed and this will be frowned upon, and they know what to expect from their siblings. And they're not going to be perfect either, but they know that they can come to you and say, "Hey, I really felt disrespected in this way or another," and mom will follow through with some consequences because that's our family culture, is to show each other respect. Okay, so number two on the steps to teaching respect is to teach them the value of something greater than themselves. Okay, so I think it's pretty common. In fact, I've never met a person who has not, in some way or another, rebelled just a little bit at some point during childhood or young adulthood, right? It's just kind of human nature. We're like, well, even the really good kids that have always obeyed without question, eventually they stand back and go, why am I doing this? Like, there has to be a greater purpose, right? And so, whether it's rules or what the parent says or against laws, even, um, if that's their highest level, their highest allegiance is to the law or to their parents, they might get to the point where they want to rebel against that too. There has to be something even higher than that. And so for us, it's God. It's this respect for someone who will hold them accountable to these rules and these morals that is way higher than themselves and way higher than mom and dad, right? In the end, what we are teaching our children is to uh, be respectful to their own values, right? We want to teach them their own value system so that they can grow up and live according to that, not just living according to our rules here at home. That's not my main priority. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yes, it does. It sure does. This is where the security part comes in for kids. This is
Mm-hmm.
actually very comforting because here's the key. They don't have to be the authority. See, if they
Mm-hmm.
don't believe in a higher God, if they don't believe in a greater good, then they have to be the ultimate authority. And that is such a burden for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when they know you respect and obey a higher power, and you're
Mm-hmm.
encouraging them to respect and obey the higher power, then they don't have to be in control. They have knowledge that there is a greater power in control. And I have to kind of share something here my husband's been saying for a while is kind of this um, social justice society that we're in right now is a sign of people not, or fewer people believing in a higher God, like a God that is in control, and there will be justice someday ultimately. So people have to seek this justice for themselves because they don't believe in a higher power that's in control, and that
Mm-hmm.
ultimately justice will happen.
Oh,
So
that's
it's,
so
yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so comforting for kids because they don't have to be the greater power, that it's out there beyond them. And also then you, of course, you teach them that this greater power, this God, loves them and wants the best for them. And that's really where the comfort and the
Right.
security starts coming in.
Right. Yeah. And as I was thinking, as you were saying, not only do they not have to be the expert about anything, but not even their parents, because that ends up being a real shift for kids too. About 18, 19, 20, they start stepping back and realizing my parents don't really know anything either. They're just these human beings that, are doing the best they know how to do. And that can be a real kind of foundation shaking event. Like, oh, my parents, oh, shoot, they're fallible too. But again, with that foundation of, but God isn't, and he's got me, whether my parents screw up majorly or not, because some of us do, and cause major issues. But what a confident way of seeing the world.
Yeah. If you want to dig into this a little bit deeper, I would suggest you go read some books or follow Jordan Peterson, Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's a real good one for like amplifying this idea. Okay, moving on to number 3, teach reverence and honor. This is like a step away from it, and it goes hand in hand with teaching about God. So, reverence and honor.
Okay, yes, this is a very interesting concept that I've thought about a lot. It seems to me that in the past couple generations, that respect for really anything outside of themselves is kind of gone for the youth, right? Young adults, they just don't, there's not a lot of that. I want to go out and be a good contributing member of society anymore. And I'm really hoping to breathe that into my children.
Yeah, it's almost like it's exactly the opposite of what some of the previous generations, like even some of our parents still had instilling in us. Like, respect for yourself is bad. And now we're
Mm,
like, yourself is the only thing you can respect. Like it's just like flip the
Yeah.
switch. And you guys know us. We don't advocate, self-loathing and all that. We've talked about all that, okay? But we do demand respect from ourselves to others, and then from our children. Like when
Hmm.
we have that for ourselves, we don't, it's not too much to ask our children too, because we've seen the fruits of it from past generations, like our grandparents' generation, that were taught to respect and be respectful. And we like that. We like what we see. So teaching the next generation to honor something like your country, like a flag, like religion, like other people's beliefs, like the laws of your country. Just something there, like there's benefits. It will serve them in many ways, like not even just, I mean, yes, they'll respect you, and that's awesome. We need that, but it goes beyond
Bonus.
that.
Yeah. Hmm. Yes, I am so grateful that you brought that aspect up of being able to see something outside of yourself, right? So, like you're saying, our grandparents' generation was maybe a little bit too invested in everyone else to the point of self-sacrifice and an unhealthy emotional boundary type issue that happened a lot. And now we've swung the pendulum completely in the opposite direction, and we have our own truths and our own sense of self, and what anybody else says doesn't matter, because if it's not my truth, I don't live it. It's like, well, I don't know that. Surely there's a happy medium where we respect others' choices, they respect ours, and we live in community together, right? And we're able to honor and have reverence for things that are special to us and to others, right? That's another thing, is there's just not a lot of things that are special to people, that are reverent to people, that require honor. One example of this is, I traveled to Israel and Egypt several years ago with my husband. It was a fascinating trip, and what I loved about Israel was just how religious the entire country was. Unlike Europe, there was no pornography on the streets. They were clean streets. The people were dressed very conservatively. There were families everywhere. I was just really, really impressed at what beautiful and family oriented country it was in general. And I think a lot of it was some of this reverence and honor for something greater than them. I thought, we need a little bit more of this going on in America.
Yes, yes, that is for sure. Like more respect is gonna benefit everybody in the country, not just um, us or our families. Like think,
Not just the
yeah, I
parents.
know,
Yeah.
think bigger than just us. Okay.
Right, right.
Mm,
Okay, so number 4, the one that we don't love to talk about, but is just as important as all the rest, and that's to teach by example, right? What are they seeing when they see their parents act in regards to respecting things? What do they see you respect? Do you have a hard, fast line that you won't cross in regards to certain things?
yeah. So think about and examine, put the magnifying glass on how you act and speak in regards to things that should be respected, like caring for the plants, animals, the planet, our earth that was created, God, the rest of God's creation. How do we treat that? Honoring others' beliefs, even if they're different than ours, like just kind of a basic respect. Um, Caring for your own property, for things in your home, for the food that's been prepared for you, for the land. We talk a lot about stewardship of the land that we're living on here on our farm, and prayer, religious services, all of these kind of things. So examine how we exemplify that for our kids.
Hmm. I think I mentioned this before, but we pray before each meal, and our prayers were starting to get a little bit on the chaotic side. Like some kid would be still walking around, and some kid would be going to take a drink, and finally, my husband just put the kibosh. He's like, everyone sits, everyone closes eyes, like there's no touching, there's no talking, because it just very easily loses control, especially when you are outnumbered to the extent that I am and Audrey is. But to just like, that was a hard, fast line for us. We do not disrespect God by doing whatever we want while we're communicating with him. So, and you get to decide what that is in your home. Maybe you really require respect for people more than anything else, or you have something that you want to hold kids accountable to more than anything else. Start with one thing, start with one area that you really want to teach, and lead by example, right? Okay, and then finally, number 5 is to make sure that there are consequences that you are comfortable with enforcing, when disrespect comes up, and enforce them with love. Okay, so this is how kids work. They like to push boundaries, they like to figure out where mom's actually going to snap What, like, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do? And so there has to be boundaries. There have to be the consequences for bad behavior, but they don't need to be enforced out of anger or malice or any of those things. They can be enforced with love, with a connecting relationship, right? Natural consequences are always the best. And with disrespect, those come pretty quickly, right? If you disrespect another sibling, they're probably going to hit you back. So I don't know that we encourage that, but there are some things that we don't have to do anything about sometimes that just things happen, right? If you are disrespectful to an animal, that animal will treat you unkindly and maybe hurt you, right? But maybe the earth, if a child litters, you make sure that child is responsible for picking that garbage up and throwing it away, right? If they disrupt someone's quiet time, maybe it's they have to go and apologize and see if they can make it up to them in some way or another. So you have to get creative a little bit, but anywhere that it's possible, let those natural consequences roll.
Right. If you broke it, now you don't have it anymore. That's a pretty black and
Yeah.
white consequence. Yeah.
Yeah.
So teaching with love, like parenting with love, disciplining with love, in a good relationship, this is the best way to help kids learn, because we can't control them and their lack of respect, but we can and must control our way of teaching them to respect and like the discipline and the love, and that's on us. That's what we'll be answering for. So we encourage and lift and guide them, we show it to them, but then in the end of the day, the choice is theirs. And like my belief is, like, while they're in my home, I require a certain level of respect, but when they're out and they're an adult, then that's on them. Like, I gave them all the tools they needed to be able to be
Hmm.
respectful people, but in the end, if I taught it to them and they're not using it, that's on them.
Right. 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 I'm reminded that in past generations, sometimes the discipline of children was not even particularly respectful to the child. And that's one thing that I'm glad to see a lot of us coming back from, where we can discipline and teach our children with love and respect. How do we teach respect if our discipline is disrespectful to the child, right? Even a 3-year-old deserves some respect, right? And we teach that through our own lessons. So it can be something as simple as, oh, that was a choice that went against our rules. I'm so sorry you made that choice. Now this is the consequence. I hate when that happens. And a hug and a love, and I'll come get you when the consequence is over or whatever. That is mind blowing for a little child to realize I'm worthy of love and acceptance. I just messed up. And so next time I'm probably going to try to do a little bit better. Or maybe I won't for a while. But that's on them. They know that we will always be a loving place and a respectful parent. So at this point, we would encourage you guys to go out, look at your lives, look at areas where you're seeing a lot of disrespect, either from yourself or your children, and pick one or two to focus on. Right, a few other areas that you might want to consider encouraging respect, just to give you ideas, are maybe how they speak with elders. Right, this used to be a huge thing. Right, you look anyone older than you in the eye and you shake their hand firmly and you speak in complete sentences and all these things. And kids just don't really do that anymore. So that could be a fun one to start with. Learning to be quiet where that's appropriate, right? In a church service or in a I don't know, I almost said courtroom. I don't know how many children are frequenting courtrooms, but any place where they're required to be a little bit more subdued, right? Not touching or messing with other people's possessions. I'm sure every family can work on that, right? Learning more about someone who's different from them, right? There have been an influx of immigrants and refugees coming to our country, all in all different areas. That could be a great chance to learn about someone who's vastly different from them, has different religious beliefs and dress and language and food and everything, and to learn to respect them even though they don't understand everything that they do.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to share a couple little examples here of additional ways that we teach our kids respect. So let's say, for example, the kids broke something. Let's go back to the oven door example. So the natural consequence is to talk about, what's going to be done to be able to replace this. But then we talk about not only respecting, the money, um, that belongs to mommy and daddy, and respect that, but then like the money that mommy and daddy have to spend on replacing this, that we won't be able to be spending on other things. And then think about the time that daddy spent making this money so that we can
Mhm.
replace this. So like, you're disrespecting his time when you just destroy things, tear things up. And then another thing that we do to teach respect is just a respect for life in our family. And so we do things like grow chicks from eggs, hatch them in an incubator, and just that amazing amount of respect that a kid has when they watch the entire process. And then as part of the experience, they go and they take apart the eggs that didn't hatch and what happened here. And, so, and then raising the chickens. We have lots of animals here that we raise, but let's just continue with chicks. So we raise those chicks, and then we feed them and we water them, and heaven forbid one of them dies because we didn't properly care for it. That is a natural consequence, and that is something we talk about, and that is a lack of respect for life.
Mm.
And then then we get to the point where, yes, we're growing these chickens for meat. And so respecting the life that this chicken gave, that we helped it have because we cared for it from the beginning to the end, so that we can have food. And just like the thankfulness to both
Mm.
God and the time that we spent and all that. So part of our animal husbandry that we do is teaching a respect for just the basic concept of life. And that is like a huge one on our list of what we want our kids to respect.
That is so powerful. Talking about the respect for life, that's something that I have had to learn over the past few years, in regards to creepy crawlies. So this is something that we have had to figure out during homeschooling, because I want my children to have that respect for life from the ground up. And I want them to learn, but I don't like bugs. I really, really don't like bugs. And so I have had to try really hard to show an example of, fascination and curiosity, and, oh, look at this interesting bug, and I wonder why God created it like this, and I wonder what its purpose is, instead of just, oh, squish it. I'm a city girl now, living on a little bit of property, so spiders are also not my thing, and they're everywhere, so I'm working really hard on getting over my own issues. Anyway, that's been a really fascinating lesson for me to learn to exemplify love for all creatures, great and small.
Yeah, and that's something. It's not that we don't squish bugs around here. I mean, obviously, you've got to you got to smack the bugs, but we talk about exactly like you do, like what is this bug's purpose? Like, why was it here on Earth besides just to make us go, ew.
Yes, and I do try to get my kids to release bugs if they find them in the house. Sometimes I do also teach them that if they find black widows, they're required to kill them for good reason. So obviously it depends on the situation, but we don't allow cockroaches to run rampant in our home, that sort of thing. But it's just been an interesting shift for me, who grew up thinking that all bugs were icky. So curious. My final thought is regarding remorse and apology. So when we disrespect other people or other people's property, we will probably feel some remorse, or we hope that our children will feel some remorse. And this can be a tricky thing. In fact, we might have to do an entire episode on this, because obviously you can't force someone to have remorse for something. The best thing you can do is try to teach them, try to put themselves in someone else's shoes, right? Oh my goodness, it looks like you destroyed her puzzle. That's very sad. It took her a long time. Think for a minute about something you've worked on for a long time, and a sibling came and broke it. Do you remember your Lego fort that somebody came and broke? That was really hard, huh? I wonder what you can do to make them feel better. And again, there's some balance there between, you don't want to shame your child, but to try to develop that natural feeling of empathy for your children is really important.
Okay, guys. So to sum it up, 5 steps you can use to teach your children respect is: number 1, basic obedience. Just that is so tightly interwoven with respect. Number 2, teach them the value of something greater than them and than you. And then number 3, teach reverence and honor, basic respect for things that are lower than God, but outside of you and your home. Number 4, teach by example. Where are you lacking in respect? And then number 5, enforce the consequences with love. You can't just talk about it and not follow up on it. So we hope these 5 steps really help you guys and your families in obtaining a little more respect. So that's it for this week, you guys. I'm Audrey.
I'm Bonnie, and we're Outnumbered. Thanks for listening, friends. Click the link in the show notes to subscribe to our email and never miss another episode.
Show us some love by leaving a review on iTunes or sharing the podcast with a friend. Thanks for all your support. We'll talk to you next week.